Boys and girls of the Revolutionary National Youth League of the Congress Coalition for Democratic Change. The winning chairman, the man under whose aegis the popular people struggle pressed up to political power and preeminence in this country, distinguished friend and brother, the Father McGill. The biggest revolutionary political youth ideologue in the history of Liberia. A man reared under the tutelage of Tweah, McGill, Tweah, Thomas Nolan, a distinguished honor, Jefferson Tamakochi. Secretary General of the CDC, Chairman of the Revolutionary Youth League, I respect our distinguished honorables who are presently embroiled in an imbroglio.
Bring it down.
My respect, it's an honor to have you here. Veteran revolutionary Kalio Barbara. I just learned that he is on the verge of becoming the assistant dean of the Liberia Grammar School of Law. Let's give him a hand for that. That's an important point. He's on the he's an assistant to the Liberia Grammar School of Law. The cream of education in Liberia among universities. From the CDC, a party that is quote-unquote repeated to abhor intellectualism and book. That party now is growing into the intellectual class than ever before. We expatiate on that later on. Other distinguished platform guests, dear compatriots, let me say thank you for the honor. This is a most consequential convening. You know, George Satayana said, if our people fail to remember their history, those who fail to remember history are condemned to repeating it, the mistakes of history. That's a powerful saying, but I will deepen and extend that saying today. And people not only need to remember their history, and people, a group, a society, a structure, a social organism must remember, but must more importantly understand their history their ideology, their reason for existing, what the French say, raison d'être. The reason they are alive, the reason they coexist or exist, they must understand that history, know why they are in existence, what motivates them. If the people do not understand those attributes, if an organization does not do those, does not understand, does not know, does not go towards a purpose, does not know why it exists, that organization is doomed to failure. Today, you are gathered here to grope towards those understandings. You've been giving propaganda that the CDC is a mass of men just following George Weah. It lacks proper ideology. If George Weah dropped today, CDC collapses. You've heard those arguments, right? You have no reason for being. You just want to make George Weah president, and after George Weah presidency, you cease to exist. Is that true? No. You are here constructing a path to 2029. That path to 2029 begins with understanding what is the CDC, what is the Revolutionary Youth League, the men and women in the Revolutionary Youth League. What are you? Who are you? Are you mere voters? Are you mere campaigners? Or are you seizing a moment in Liberian history to correct the ills of our society and project challenge? What the guy who introduced me, having said, the elitist stranglehold on our country, to disrupt and rupture that elitist stranglehold. You exist for that reason, to bring hope to the mass of our people and keep them in power for as long as possible. We'll discuss that later on. So you exist for a reason. You exist for a reason. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about our ideology, our history. And in that vein, the impact we have made as a party, as a movement on the body politic of our country. The challenges we have faced. The propaganda that has been buffeted against us. That has made us to look inward, to divide, or to doubt ourselves. To second guess our own maneuvers, that propaganda in the social media age. We're here to reflect and ponder all of those. And having understood all of those dimensions, to then prepare ourselves to face 2029 and hereafter. CDC as a political party was not founded for specific years. CDC as a political party was established for political continuity or perpetuity. To continue, there will be rises and there will be falls. The Republican and the Democratic parties have existed for over 200 years. But both parties have alternated in the White House. Is that correct? So one electoral loss cannot decimate men and women of political resolve and will. Cannot annihilate them, their drive for the freedom of our people, just losing an election after coming to power. Let me say this. We intend to govern the country for as long as possible, but there will be future electoral losses as well. If I told you the CDC will rule Liberia for 100 years, you should stone me. It's not possible in our democracy. So the party must reach the mature stage to appreciate victory and keep itself together when defeat comes. But it must understand why defeat came. It must not rely on propaganda and falsehood. It must know and understand why it lost power. Then it will make its way back. The Democrats have lost power in Liberia and in the US. You think the Democrats are going to cease to exist? The Democrats are now having the same movement that you are having. They're reflecting. Right now they're in a stage of blaming. They're blaming President Biden for not stepping down, do so. They are blaming Kamala, right? The blame game. CDC have a share of blame game, right? But we now go past the stage of blaming each other to now an ideological deepening into the understanding of our loss and propagation of the ideas in moving forward. So I will say to you that you are part of a consequential historical movement, the CDC. You're not just a political party, you're a movement. You need to understand your place in Liberian history. You know, it's difficult to talk about CDC without going back to the progressive era. The progressive forces of this country challenged the oligarchs and Tweah party and crumbled the oligarchs. The elitists who ran the country for so long and deprived the mass of our people were challenged by the likes of Amos Sawyer, Marcus Matthew, Tweah Nantipoten, Tweah were missing. All of the progressives, they challenged the Tweah party in the 1970s. And so we have to celebrate them for the transformation we have in many days. Many times we excoriate, we condemn the progressives. We like to beat on them. I think it's unfair. They have paid their fair share in the struggle to transform Liberia. They did not come to political power themselves. They were associated with regimes that came to power. But at the end of the day, history has not favored them. And so the progressive ideas, some of the ideas that you see CDC trying to propagate, some of the things, the beliefs we have, originate from the progressive movement. In the visions of Marcus Matthew, of Tweah Nantipoten. There was a time when we all were wearing Tipote sandal because of the ideas of Tipote. They did not take power, but they infused into us a dynamism to force the struggle. And CDC is a continuation of the progressive struggle. And you should know that today. Do not despise the progressives. Do not despise them. The progressives fought the Tweah party and came to and Samuel Doe took office. We entered an era of militarism in the 1980s. It was a very difficult era for Liberia. Economically, politically, too many deaths, and the progressives withdrew their support from Mr. Doe. The turbulence of the 1980s led us to a catastrophic civil war in which Mr. Taylor rose to power. He became a rebel leader, and consequently in 1997, he was elected. We entered state collapse. So from militarism of the 1980s to state collapse in the 1990s, to collapse of our state, the rule of what Dr. Sawyer called the bonanza of international gangsterism, all of that prevailed in the 1990s. We grew up in that time. We could not, university, I entered university along with McGill in 1995. It took us almost 4 years after graduating from high school, 3 years, to enter. The university was closed and opened in 1995. But I said I would not go to any other school other than the University of Liberia. So I joined my colleague, Nat McGill, and we entered the US. So Liberia has seen some difficult periods. After the Tweah party, the militarism of the 1980s, rebel warfare and state collapse in the 1990s, we all now were groping toward the reconstitution of social order. How will we rebuild Liberia from this fracas, from this inferno of chaos and crisis? Well, where is Liberia going? It was in the crucible of that determinism that ideas about what the 2005 election should look like began to take shape. I used to be a member of the Unity Party. I used to be a member of the Unity Party. I was a member of a youth league of Unity Party. I remember delivering a powerful speech to Madam Ellen Johnson Sally. The next thing she invited me, I think she took me almost a bedroom. She handed me a hell of an envelope. I was running all the way down street with that envelope. And we went to organize a massive youth league. And we took the election against Mr. Taylor, and we lost miserably. Yeah. After those elections, we began to grow. What would 2005, what would the country look like? You look at the past, you see the militarism of the 1980s. You see the Tweah party dominance. You see the state collapse, warring factions. Young intellectuals are thinking, where do we go? It was in that line that, do I continue to go with the Unity Party? Then we called McGill, my friend McGill, this ever-potent organizing chairman. He organized, there's nobody has organized more civil society organization politically than Nathaniel Fallow McGill. Nasiko, all kinds of groups that were organizing. He organized, all kinds of things he organized. Your fields, the boy organized. Then he led the lip wing. He organized lip wing. And where McGill is, I have to be there. We all came from the same student political ideology. So we said, we wanted to project Winston Tubman. And after some time, you got to think, well, if we projected Winston Tubman, I was with Ellen Johnson Sally, what is the difference? What is the fundamental difference? Are the intellectuals of the new generation just luxuriating and playing in the minefield in the backyard of the elites? Or should they carve a part of their own? So we said, I placed a call to McGill. I said, you know, McGill, I don't think this is a direction. I think we need a radical break with elitism. We need to shatter the bonds. I mean, these people who have run the country, they believe they're entitled to political power. They believe they are educated. We all are educated, yes, but they believe they have the right, they reserve the right to run the country. The Tweah party is not in power anymore, but it has metamorphosed into a structure and form that continues to dominate the state, even in the form of indigenous crisis. We should be smarter than that. So we are not going to perpetuate the prolongation of the Tweah party dominance in different forms. I will break away from the venerable old man, the learned lawyer, Professor Winston Thelma. So you got to join me. We will propagate George Manuel Weah as the beacon of hope of the new movement, the mobilizing dynamic of a society groping towards social transformation. We will raise George Weah and we'll take him to the ceremony. Again, Thomas and I had an argument, so you like to be emotional, but we'll not join you. As a comrades, we'll meet somewhere if you don't join me. Today, history has vindicated me. We are sitting on the same side. So CDC emerges in 2005. The gargantuan propulsive burst of the force of CDC was cataclysmic. And the entire country, the entire world shook. So what is happening in Liberia? George Weah is a popular former footballer. He did best for his country. He supported the Lone Star. He's giving all. This man is popular today because of his heart, not because he's helped more people in informal ways, funeral, scholarships, all that stuff. So he's touched the country as a whole. He was a shining star of Liberia. We only turned all of those positive symbols into a political movement. You see, the world began to witness. But there were violent reactionaries, there were violent criticisms of our move. Why would we take George Weah and bring him to power? Why should we? We have many, many interminable debates. You were referencing some of the debates. What was the response of the intelligentsia? What was the response of the progressives? What was the response of the general population? Anytime you launch a movement, people will respond, either positively or negatively or neutrally. The overwhelming response to the emergence of CDC among the intelligentsia was negative. The belief was that we are moving the country toward chaos, that George Weah, quote unquote, is not prepared to govern, he's not, quote unquote, educated. Why do we take him to power in all of that debate? I had a lengthy debate with Dr. Ibrahim Famuleh, expatiating the theory and the raison d'etre of CDC and the ideology. We had a clash, and since that time, he never took a pen again. So we're engaged on all those fronts. Among the progressives, Samuel Kofi Woods saw the quintessential importance of this emergence. In the United States, he had extensive meetings with Dr. James Scully, my dear friend, and I, knowing that we're behind this movement, while the organizing committee was in Liberia, led by Chairman Richard Gould, the standard bearer were here. We were in the United States fomenting the same idea, and so the two groups merged. But Kofi paid a visit to Minnesota and wanted to talk to Collier and myself. And to understand where we're going, he understood intrinsically that there was a need for this populous break from the elitist stranglehold. He knew that. His debate was that we should not zero in on one person and bring them to the movement. Let the movement galvanize, support, and move democratically toward this person, rather than us beginning with the individual and then backwards. So there was that debate he propounded. He too was interested in becoming the generational ego. Everybody has a right. So he has a legitimate argument. Why are we not choosing Kofi? So he said, no, don't choose me. I want George Weah, Kofi Woods, Tewa Gongo, all of those people you can identify to come to this bastion called CDC. Let seditionists elect and let them canvass among seditionists and let's see who will emerge. That was his theory. If George Weah wins me, I will support George Weah. Let us not zero in and say, let's get George Weah to the masses. There's a legitimate argument there. There were a lot of debates held at the time, and we told Mr. Woods, we propounded the idea that, listen, at this stage, we will have to use the populism of Mr. Weah, the good that he has done for the country, as a dynamic towards the ultimate aim that you want, which is building a stronger institution. Where is not an institution, it's an individual. Okay, he may not be around for 100 years, so we know that. But can we, in the meantime, use his populism as a guide rail for cementing this institution? So we have to begin with him. That's why we said, I told you the formula, he is a mobilizing dynamic of a society hankering after social transformation.
No, can you do the classes? Yo.
So, Kofi parted ways. He eventually made a meeting. He made it at a meeting with the standard bearer himself in Florida. We all invited, and he and his team parted ways. So Kofi has some CDC leanings, in the sense that he just wanted to emerge differently. He wanted the CDC to emerge differently. He had his own argument, and we granted him ears, and when he parted ways. When the movement was formed, after all the legal hula baloo and CDC was established, Gabriel's Bacchus Matthew, the quintessential proponent of the progressive movement of the 1970s, broke rank with other members of that movement and said, if Gabriel Martin did not succeed, if Tipota did not succeed, if Amos Sawyer did not succeed, then let George Weah succeed. And so he openly identified, he did, with the CDC. He saw in the CDC a continuation of his aspirations and dreams. Having become an old man now, having fallen politically, he turned to the young, indefatigable, dynamic personality in George Weah to continue to corrupt this movement toward political success. So that's why Bacchus endorsed Weah. So this is to tell you there were intellectual debates within the progressive movement. But Timothy stayed away. I don't know how to characterize him, whether he was openly averse to CDC. He was stuck between the elitist spars that he himself had struggled against, but he could not find himself coming openly as backup. So he was stuck somewhere in history, knowing that he even had a personal relation, a family relation, the crewman coming. So there's some political ambivalence characterizing him. Yes, he remains very respectful of the CDC. That's why the progressive movement, the reaction. In the broader intelligentsia and the media, were negative reaction. I had a long argument with a friend, who said, listen, let me tell you, I know George Weah more than you. If I ask George Weah for $5,000 today, as we sitting right here, I send somebody for 5,000. I bet you'll be sitting here with me in that 45 minutes, 5,000 will come. I like the man, I love the man, he's a good human being, he's a good heart, but he should not be president of Liberia. I do not want my daughter to grow up under him as president. If God told me, say, let George Weah will change Liberia to New York, I would tell God, let Liberia stay in the West Point. So there was that strain in the intelligentsia. Even people who knew Weah, they had that argument. In the USA, we're battling them. The one thing you have to know about your own leader you follow, and this is why I want to respect you, is that your leader is popular and loved by many, but he's also dissented by others in a violent way. That's why you need to double your effort to triumph over the people who dislike him. You need to know that. You need to understand that today. But when he comes, he has positive spots, but he also has dissenting spots. In the electoral class, in my class, let me tell you, all the people I went to school with, when we founded CDC, from all 15 countries, the people who I became friends with from Nima County, from 5-year-old, the people I was friends with from Bon County, from 6-7-year-old, I went to elementary school with all of them. When we called CDC mass meeting, and all who finished college, I did not see maybe more than 2 of those people in that gallery. I went to a Nima County meeting in 2005. I saw everybody. I said, tell me, why are these people cannot come to CDC? So I knew we had an intelligentsia crisis. I knew that. But having an intelligentsia weakness does not mean you can't come to power. Donald Trump had an intelligentsia weakness in the United States in 2015. You know that, right? He overcame the intelligentsia weakness. There was media conspiracy almost unanimous against Donald Trump, but the populism of the leader can overwhelm and inundate that media bias or intelligentsia bias. It happened in 2015 in the United States. It happened here also in 2017 under President Tweah. So, intelligentsia animosity is not a guarantee of failure on the part of a grassroots movement. But it means you have to look and see how to break into the rank and file. You cannot continue to face adversity. There's a foolhardy strategy to say, I will continue to face the firing and I believe the fire will go, or I will just go, no. You want to find a way to end that. And so some of the reflection here is to find a way. You now are becoming members of the intelligentsia. The class is not static. It is organic and dynamic. It will evolve. The intelligentsia of the 1990s is not the intelligentsia of 2000. The intelligentsia of today is not the intelligentsia of yesterday. So we are seeing that intelligentsia cracking. Seditions are entering the rank and file, and so the resistance from intelligentsia has diluted, has moderated a bit. But the challenge is still there. There are still pockets of resistance that we have to move in and decimate those pockets and bring them into the right conversation. So this is the party that you are celebrating today. This party is bigger than any individual. It is an idea. An individual is finite, limited. An idea is what? Infinite, timeless. We want the CDC to be discussed 200 years from today in Liberia. Simon will no longer be around. George Weah will no longer be around. Fidel will no longer be around. Jeff Koji will no longer be around, right? Eugene Nambo will no longer be around. But we want the propagation of the CDC, what we're saying here today, to be around, to persist. So that's why we have to go back to ideology and ideas. Why we gather, what actuates us, what motivates us, what inspires us, what keeps us together, what binds us. So we launched this movement. George Weah becomes standard bearer. He goes to the first election. Of course, you know what happened, people get all the things, but in the end, Donald Trump can say they cheated him, but you'll be crying and you're out of power. So we're out of power for 12 years. In that same period of being out of power, we're preparing for power. We did not give up in the 2 losses, right? We're motivated, having lost, that we will find a way to get to power. It happened that in the 12 years of the Madam Sedi presidency, Liberians voted for Madam Sedi, but Liberians did not realize the economic dividends that they expected. There were massive flows of international support to that government. NGOs were hiring people all over. In fact, some of the reasons we lost is that I remember in 2005, Collie and I sent Jeff Koji, all these boys, we sent them in Banga. Some of the propaganda that people used was that if you didn't vote for Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the NGOs that are providing jobs here will go. Yes. And so, and you came back with that feedback. So like people said they voted for, because all the people said the NGOs will leave if Madam is not the president. So if the NGO left, we will not have jobs, our children will not go to school, so we put a woman there. Because she was bringing the NGO. That perception, I will talk about it later, has something to do with our loss in 2000 when those NGOs left. Eventually, Madam became president, but they had to go. Liberia was in a post-conflict state where a lot of aid was flowing to the country, a lot of help. You know, NGOs were here helping in health, in education, hiring people. UNMIL was here providing jobs to the government. All of those things ceased by 2017, just before President Weah assumed office. The poverty graph, when you look at Liberia, was increasing as the president was getting into power. He did not cause the increase in the level of poverty in the country. It was happening in the country because of macroeconomic circumstances that the public felt, but that was not being articulated because of the pro-media bias of Madam Sirleaf, the large international support in goodwill and the international largesse in finance and goodwill that she received internationally. All of that marks the level, and the absence of social media. The pervasiveness of social media under Madam Sirleaf was not what it is today. You know that? So all of these helped shield the president, the former president, in some ways, that it did not put into sharp relief the issues in the country in a way that it did under President Weah. But President Weah walked into a firestorm Where he thought he had a solid foundation, he put his foot on a quicksand. By the time he's landed there, the sand collapsed and we went under 6 feet. That was why we started dealing with the macroeconomic maelstrom.
That is something different.
Inflation shooting all over the place. Exchange rate instability. Revenue collapse. I mean, by the time we took office, revenue was not performing. Then we got Thomas now, and Thomas now struggled the first year. We started thinking about how to build revenue, the revenue base. We did a lot of extraordinary economic management team meetings. That's what we're doing. You know, that's where the proper. So all that stuff we're doing. You know, one of our mistakes also is that in the CDC we try to be transparent and fair to the Liberian people to bring them the things that we were doing in a way that the former government was not. So I'm citing this example at the mapper. You hear about this 25 million mapper. You know, Thomas told me one day, he said, Tweah, they mapper the people can be talking about, they say you take 25 million. Now they think what we're doing with the central bank, all sitting around the table, you, Western Tabby, all sit up, we're talking about how the central bank people doing the work. Now I see money and the people talking about that you took 25 million or so I can pitch myself because I was sitting down there, you all sitting, working on 25 million that you took. You see my brother, that the narrative, that the propaganda. We didn't do it to them at CDC. They did the map up. I published reports of map-up exercise where Burma Kamara, the former finance minister, others took cash into the field to exchange money in the same way that happened under the CPL, but it was never politicized. Why it was never politicized? There was no social media. Right? They could now go get a live following on social media and write something and they take it. So it was not there. In the CDC time, they decided to weaponize that. And why they weaponized that? Because President Tweah made a speech and said we will give 25 million to the central bank to stabilize. President Salif made no such speech, even though the people used more than 200 million of reserve money to mop up and mobilize and stabilize the exchange under Madam Salif. But it never came outside because once she didn't give a speech, two, her finance minister never went to explain transparently to the people in Town how a mop-up exercise can happen. Meaning, people take money in the cash to take the money from outside and bring it into the central bank. The propaganda said, oh, since someone talking about that money that coming outside, we put it in your hand. Like he the one went outside and took the money. And unfortunately, some people believe it. That I physically went outside there and took money. Because I was explaining, I was only here busy one day, and the guy called and said, Mr. Tweah, you know, is it true that you did not really, because I heard you say you took the money yourself. I said, no, I didn't say that. I was only explaining that money leaves from under the mattress. It comes from outside, the Liberian dollar, it goes into the central bank and is sterilized there. I was just making it clear to you, transparently, democratically, so you know what is happening in government. We became the victims of that transparency. So sometimes too much information is dangerous in politics. You understand that? But sometimes also, so the Liberian people are now standing back, they know all of this now. They're getting to understand all the propaganda. But that's what we had to deal with. That's what we had to deal with. So we dealt with that. We did the governance things. It was tough in the beginning of the year under President Tweah. In the beginning, right, you know it was tough. Things were challenging, no revenue, salary, the World Bank budget support, all of that. The people took all that toughness, legitimate toughness, what we did not cause, and turned it into a political firestorm against us. June 7, all that stuff. As if we were doing something wrong in the country when we were not really doing anything wrong. So the Liberian people were made to believe that we were doing something wrong. They wanted to see skyscrapers in 1 year. They wanted to see macro performance in 1 year. And so since we were there, we were responsible. They were voting against us in by-election. That's how Dillon won. Our own people, you two did not understand what we were doing. You two joined. Some of them began criticizing your own ministers. And there was just this unity. And in that balance, the first 2 years were difficult. Then we turned it around into the greatest macroeconomic comeback in the history of the country. That today the World Bank and the IMF are all celebrating. We did the harmonization thing that was also politicized. And I heard the current finance minister say harmonization became a victimization. That's not true. Harmonization lifted 15,000 Liberians who were making $45 to $125 US. So 15,000 Liberians got a salary increase. 7,000 Liberians who were making way too above the other Liberians came down. So if you say 7,000 is bigger than 15,000, I say, go back to school. Go through your math. Because if I'm assessing the impact of 7,000 decline versus 15,000 coming up, of course, bad news sells, good news is difficult, it's no news, right? So people will weaponize the bad news. Okay, there were decreases. And let me say this today, there were no decreases in the health and education sector. The nurses in the election who said you harmonize our pay were never harmonized, they were never touched, but they used that propaganda, and so harmonization became again another football. So the point is that there were massive revolutionary transformation in the macro space, in the governance space, in the powers, electricity space. We reduced tariff, we extended the road, you're driving on the RIA road right now. Look, I told somebody said there's no traffic. Somebody said traffic, look, I said, you know why there's no traffic partially in the country? Because RIA road is wide now. By the time you move from R2 and get to Cinco, you're so fast that even if there's small delay in Cinco, you will not feel it. Before we came to power, that road was small, so we used to stay 1 hour on it, then you come Cinco. So the traffic eases because the president enlarged the road. We took that step. So people are living with our impact or our development. So we did a lot in this country, and we have time to talk about the gains. But the big question is that if the CDC did a lot, why did the CDC lose? Why did we lose by a slim majority? A minority, yeah, that's a tiny majority. Why 17,500 people went against us? That's SKD. SKD is 20,000, so 3,000 less SKD people in the country said we don't want CDC to continue. That's a small. That's not a mandate. It's not like the mandate Donald Trump just got in the United States. It's not a mandate. But why? Question we have to gather: why did that happen? If Mr. Tweah, you're cleaning that on the economic front, by the time by the way, MCC scorecard should be out by now. I don't know why it's not out, but MCC scorecard should be out by now. Let's see whether the current government passed or failed. But by the time MCC said we have passed the highest, by the time all the reports, the World Bank report show up, you know, President Tweah took Liberia out of fragility. It was CDC government that made Liberia not to be a fragile country under the World Bank and the African Development Bank. You have never, I don't know if you've heard that success, but in the midst of the electoral noise, there was no way to tell that story. Yeah. But we are no longer considered a fragile country. When the World Bank board meets and is talking about fragile, they don't put Liberia there. So we are outside fragile because of the governance improvement under President Tweah. So that's why all of that, that's why the roads, that's why the market building, that's why all of this stuff. Why, Mr. Tweah, did we lose? There are many reasons political parties lose, and the Democratic Party in the United States is going after, is trying to look into those reasons why they lose. So there's no one reason you can point to and say you lost because of this. But you have to look at a cluster of factors, a major factor. For me, the major factor I see, I could be wrong, the most consequential reason we lost is that some 17,000, 20,000, 18, I mean, holding all things constant in terms of coalition, building, all that stuff, there were people who believed they wanted to see, since they were told that we were the ones who took the NGO jobs away. Now, we are the reasons why investors are not coming to the country. And they saw NGOs during their time. Only was here, they were working. And since they haven't been working since President Tweah came, they wanted to see whether a change will bring back what they used to have. No amount of campaign ever convinced them. They wanted this social experiment where CDC 6 years after on mail. I won't see, because where others we are seeing keep saying on mail 9 year. I won't see whether if the next 6 years comes, we will still experience the same thing under CDC we experienced, or even worse. If that is the case, then I will be convinced that CDC will not doing anything bad. You can never convince those people. They lost their jobs. Some of them said they were never working, and they came together and said, we want we want to see something different. Not that they had extraordinary hope in Waka doing something, but they just wanted to see the results of that experiment. What would happen if CDC is not in power? Well, God has granted that experiment, right? 9 years, 9 months now, they have seen. And what do you think the verdict is now? Because by this time in 2018, the CDC had launched its development plan, the Program Agenda for Prosperity and Development, PAPD. We are launching already. The Unity Party is still consulting on a plan for arrest. The party that lacks intellectualism, the party that does not know book, the party that is not supposed to follow plan, the party that is ad hoc, constructed a development plan in 8 months, shared it with the development partners, they weigh in on it, and we launched that plan in October. The party that's supposed to have all the PhDs and know all the book, they're still running by happenstance. They're guessing. They have changed 2 finance ministers. The new finance minister does not even know where that plan is going. Because he will not, the Minister of Finance has to be at the center of constructing the development plan if you have to have transformation. If he is not at the center, and he takes over a plan, he doesn't know, you outsource that plan, they outsource that plan to one consulting firm. They say the firm that we hire, will hire the assignment to control, we want that firm, we'll take a new firm, and they are struggling. You see, that's the division in the country. You hurt the country when you politicize everything. The people who run the PAPD, who stay on the mistakes of the PAPD in their judgment and write a better plan for you. You gave that plan to somebody who didn't write anything, they would struggle. And that's the struggle they're having now. So you're just going to have some group of paragraphs together, but there's now going to be a strategic holistic development plan under arrest. And it's just going to lead to consequential collapses. So you see that in 9 months, the government doesn't have a development plan to go by. So the first year was a failure. On top of that, the government is now into what the World Bank will describe as polycrisis. Multifarious crisis all over the place. It's going to affect the Liberian people. Now we have the political crisis on the Capitol building. Nothing can happen. The World Bank budget support that's supposed to come to pay salary in December and ratified by the national legislature may not be ratified. So what will happen to the 40 million? We started 40 million under the World Bank. The World Bank used to give Liberia 20 million. Because of our improvement, they started giving Liberia 40 million. They are supposed to bring 40 million from Minister Gafwa to help pay salary for December. Well, but that needs parliamentary ratification. That's why I wrote recently, I do not believe that the president minister will sit down and allow himself to violate the budget law of the country by passing the budget, by politicizing himself into this, and I think he will advise the president correctly so that they follow the law. I think that's where the stalemate is now. But the long and short is that in 9 months, 10 months, the country have seen that definitely CDC was better. So you do 9 months, CDC has already won. Next year, if you don't lay the basis for next year now, so by the time October reaches, from my experience, the year has ended. You have to start planning the parameters for 2025. What it looks like now, 2025 is also going to be another failure. So by the time you have 2 annual failures, economically, politically, electricity, I saw that they're trying to increase the tariff. I mean, there's just too many crises the government contending with. So the prospect for you coming back is there. You can see the failure. Now the good thing is that there are lessons. What lessons do we learn from our failure? There are really important lessons that we have to learn from our failure while we are gathered here. I told you from the beginning that there are rises and there are falls. When you rise, you take courage, you continue to be happy, you learn from that. When you fall, you also learn from your mistakes. But we got to do some lesson learning here. The first lesson we have to learn is that we are in a social media age. Propaganda in the social media age can be destructive. If you follow it, you will divide. Liberians are now knowing that some of the things that affected CDC media propaganda. The people said we kill people, can you imagine? Full auditors, all kinds of propaganda were there. Voters voted that way because of the propaganda. Now, I don't think that propaganda is going to be as impactful in a future election as it was, so you could benefit from that. You will learn. My dear talked about that, about unity. If there are factions within the CDC, everybody bickering, propaganda, dividing friends. I've known McGill for half of my life. What I have in my life, I know McGill. I can never hate McGill. I can never be against McGill. But how can people, McGill and myself, were seeing like people were putting words, trading words between us? That was a strategy that the opponent will use. The opponent is still using that strategy in the CDC. Let's divide the CDC. Let's split the CDC so that 2029 it is weaker. Let's have some CDC lawmakers on that side Let them join. So let's play in it. There is no way we beat CDC if CDC is united homogeneously. It's clear. There's no way. So the strategy is divide and rule. Now Samuel Tweah to another sedition. That sedition will buy the lie. Continue to propagate that lie, and by the time 2029 comes, the CDC will be in tatters. We have to learn from that mistake. And you have to stay together as a party. In a political party, there are divisions, there are factions, there are camps, there are ideological camps. Some people are in the center, some people are on the right, some people are on the left, right? In the Democratic Party, in the Republican Party, John McCain used to be a liberal Republican. He's a conservative, but he was a little bit to the left. There are other senators who are liberal, but they are conservative, right? They got Reagan Democrats. They got Ronald Reagan are conservative, but some people say the Reagan Democrat, they are conservative, but they're liberal. So there are vast sway. There are shades of opinion of camps in the CDC. There will be some people who like this other person, who believe in a person's style of governance, who believe in this other ideology. But it doesn't mean that we are enemies. We are in the same party. We should use our diversity to strengthen the purpose of our existence as a political party. We should learn that lesson today. We should learn the lesson of the role that a youth league can play. Young people can play in an election. Young people voted overwhelmingly for the CDC in this current election. But we still lost some young people also do, right? And there are better things that a youth league can do to capture the young people. Who are the young people that you don't see under the sycamore tree? Are you bothered about why they don't come under the sycamore tree? Do you ever think yourself about why? You ask yourself why? You have friends. Why I can see this class of young people around CDC? Why? Have you asked yourself that question? Who are they? What social stratum do they belong to? Why I don't see them affiliating with the CDC? I'm afraid. You should be afraid. You have friends. People from Stella Marie. Why the girls from Stella Marie? Do you see them in the CDC? Why? The girls from Convent, are they not supposed to be in the CDC? So we just said Teresa Garen will not be in the CDC. We accept that. Your device is strategy to penetrate Teresa Garen, let it carry the CDC. But I was saying, you find the militant the Convent girls, let them be doing the let the post them on social media, Convent girl in uniform, turn to the CDC. What's the strategy there? You gotta learn for that lesson. You cannot pass off a whole group of Liberians and say, I don't care, I can win election in spite of them and despite them. No. It's the same way in the United States. The resistance that we felt outside from Liberians who are working in the State Department, Liberians who are working in Treasury, who don't see themselves in any way affiliated with something called CDC for some reason. Why should that be that way? Imagine if CDC has some Liberians working in Treasury Department. When the Treasury Assistant Minister received the propaganda from Spoon Network, and that Liberian there who working for the Assistant Treasury will say, who likes CDC will say, Mr. Assistant Minister, that Spoon Network, that propaganda network, don't listen to these things that they talk about that party called CDC. Then you ask them, but you know CDC? Well, listen, they got the issue, but I know them. I know a lot of people. If CDC have people in the State Department, in Congress, you don't think it will make difference for us? Why is a strategy? So we got to reflect. We can't say all the people working all over there against all will still be there. No, because they're lying on us. They are validating the lies that came from here and when they come from here and go there. You see that? So that's what we have to think about. So as we sit here and reflect, we are here for a reason. The path to World War 2029. One of the things I want to leave you with is that there are distinct peculiarities and similarities between Donald Trump and George Weah. They have their individual idiosyncrasies, their styles of government that can hurt people. Some people don't like them because of the way they talk, the way they carry themselves. You can look at Donald Trump in the Republican Party. There are many people who don't like him, but he has won 2 elections there now, right? The highest number of votes, good. George Weah himself has his idiosyncrasy. He has this unique style of governance that can irritate people. He has won an election and he remains the most popular figure. So there are parallels between Trump's ascendancy and Weah's recent ascendancy. Trump has won. The key question is that, can Weah come back? And that's the question we are wrestling with now. For we are to come back, you all must stay united. You all must go out. You all must go out. You all must go back and recruit people. If we must come back, we must build coalition better. We lost partly because we lost coalition levels. So we have to keep in a strategy of building coalition if we must come back. At the end of the day, I believe we will come back because we are now safely here. Because we are now safely here to play the strategy for that comeback. Thank you.
And folks, that was the voice of the former Minister of Liberia, Samuel D. Tweah, the speaker series here at the National Youth Retreat of the CDC. The folks hierarchies of the CDC are here to grace the occasion. And this is just it right here.
By the time we